Over the last couple of years, we've seen a real renaissance for new TCGs, in an era, if you will, that I think that has come to a close. And I've dubbed it the free Trendies era that lasted from the end of 2020 through around Q1 2022. And I really want to dive deep and explain really what this era was for the trading card game industry and just really go in depth. Now, free trendies is a word that I've constructed. It's based off of free tendies, which is like easy money. And it really goes off the back of trendies, which is just trend, is these new TCGs that come out. And they're kind of like a trend. So the free money that's made off of new TCGs is basically what I'm dubbing this era. And it started in Q4 2020 with Flesh and Blood. And I think overall, it's really important to really analyze this whole era now that it's almost pretty much done in my mind, and just realize what the takeaways from it are. Because in this current era in 2022, I think everybody's on the same page. You know, you're like, well, if I have the product, I don't want to sell for 40-30% loss. I'm just gonna hold on to it and stick it out and just ride the wave. And yeah, you know, that's what I'm doing. Spoiler alert. And overall, that makes sense. But I think, in a sense here, it's good to look at the past. Realize what got us to this part, man. And really why we have all the products we do. And, you know, what were the hits and misses. And really, what can we learn from this? And overall, you know, let me go through the era, the free trendies. You know, you have Q4 2020 was when it all started, man. And man, it was pretty fucking crazy around that time. I started making Flesh and Blood content for the first time, and you know, I was analyzing the whole game at first, and then I bought into it with a bunch of bulk alpha and a bunch of stuff, and I was having a great time. And overall, the market was pretty good. You know, there's three main spikes of Flesh and Blood in 2020 at the end of it, and you know, over at the first spike I was like, oh, cool, everyone's making money, this is great. But then after the second spike of Flesh and Blood, where prices went like just parabolic for Welcome to Wrath Alpha boxes, it was insane. I think that the thing that really catalyzed this whole event, right, for the free trendies era was just greed. Greed just consumed everyone out there, and people just had these dollar signs in their eyeballs, just high off of the money that was being made, that they just, you know, everyone was just, it was a feeding frenzy, man. It was crazy. It was so crazy, man. I swear to you, I used to make Flesh and Blood content where I'd analyze different products, right? And say like, oh, I think that the Heart of Fandale's $500. It'll probably be like that for, you know, 3 or 4 years. You know, I said a lot of stupid shit back then because I just didn't know. I didn't know what the market was going to do. It was crazy. And after the second spike of Flesh and Blood, where, you know, prices went crazy in Q4 2020, I literally, for every video I had, I put, hey, this is not financial advice. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm just a normal guy in a normal room, because it was that crazy. I even had these videos calling it Hurricane FOMO because people were going absolutely crazy over the secondary market for Flesh and Blood. It was an insane event, and I think that is really what started this whole renaissance of TCGs. When you see all these Kickstarters currently in 2022, I'm gonna take a step back. The reason for that is Flesh and Blood. It started this whole thing, man. I'm telling you, it really paved the way for success of a lot of different TCGs out there, and it really just started this whole new type of thought process. And it really is the perception that changed in people's minds. Because going back to 2020, before 2020 and 2019, if you ask someone, hey, I have this new TCG, did you want to buy some stuff? People say, hell no. Like, new TCGs don't succeed. They fail in a couple months. I'm going to lose all my money. No one wants to play this game with me. I'm out. And you ask stores and they're like, dude, I got burned so many times with new TCGs, thousands of dollars down the drain, dead inventory. I ain't touching that with a 10-foot stick. You know, people just didn't like new TCGs. But after Flesh and Blood, it just really was a game changer. People opened their eyeballs, stores opened their eyeballs, other people who wanted to create new TCGs opened their eyeballs because they're like, oh, look at how much money's going there. It was absolutely nuts back in 2020. So I just wanted to just paint that picture for you if you weren't around for the era of TCGs. It was absolutely wild. I got caught up into it too. I'm not gonna lie, man. I think if you want to know why, if you're like, okay, Bronson, you've made your point, things got fucking crazy. Why? The answer is because when you look at a new TCG overall, you're analyzing a bunch of different factors. You're analyzing the company. Is the company going to survive as much? Do they have a good strategy? Is the lore good? Is the artwork good? Is the production of the cards good? Is the gameplay actually fun? And does it really bring something new to the table? And when analyzing Flesh and Blood, when I first started making content for Flesh and Blood, I was not a huge fan at first, I'll admit. I got into it because I thought, oh, wow, look, this new TCG, there's a lot of buzz about it. I don't want to learn more. And I started looking at the lore, artwork. I ordered cards. And once I started playing the game and really just diving deep down the rabbit hole of everything that Flesh and Blood is, I was like, there was this moment in my brain that it just snapped. And I thought, you know what? This game is such a hidden gem. There's something about this game that's going to make it succeed. Just everything about it is perfect. And I don't want to say perfect, but it just checks every single box that I'd want for a new TCG. And I just want to buy as much as I can. And I think you had me along with, a lot higher network individuals out there in the background that had this same realization. And I know that sounds crazy. I know you might disagree with me, but I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of other individuals and different entities in the background, I believe, that had this same realization, that they looked and analyzed this game overall and they played the game and they're like, damn, like this thing is gold. This thing is going to last for a while. So when they had that realization and they saw the market prices for these cold foil cards, the legendaries and fables and such, they just pounced. They're like, okay, I want to buy as much as I can. I want to get into this. This is my game now. And when that happened in Q4 2020, all the prices just skyrocketed. But then you also had crazy news off the back of that. You had the Flesh and Blood getting into TCG Player that was really big. Channel Fireball now, having product for Flesh and Blood, getting even more market share of people into Flesh and Blood. You had so many different factors happen in that shorter period of time. And you also had the virus thing where a lot of people were at home. You had that to consider. And there's a lot of factors that I'm not saying. But all in all, what happened is there's a lot of people out there that realize that this game has legs, that this game can succeed, and there's something just something to this game that's going to make it work. And that really was the catalyst to a bunch of other games after that. So, after Flesh and Blood, after people made money hands over fist through, buying different collections or buying certain cards, you had all these different spikes. So this first spike, second spike, third spike. And through these spikes, people made so much money. And I think that the amount of money at the end of 2020 got people thinking, well, we got a lot of money out of this. The margin was pretty fucking high of all the cards that they got. And after that time period, I think people realized that there's a lot of money in new TCGs. So they started diversifying in others, most notably MetaZoo in early 2021. And I think that was really the second, lightning strikes twice kind of event, where not only did Flesh and Blood new TCG come out, but it just skyrocketed in value. But then MetaZoo did the same exact thing. And after MetaZoo, I feel like there's so many other different Kickstarters that came out after that just people kept riding that wave. They made a lot of money with Flesh and Blood, moved to MetaZoo. MetaZoo went up, sold, went into other TCGs. And I feel like now that's where we're at. A lot of the money was scouting out and just diversified in all these other different TCGs. and the focus was in those aspects and in those areas. And overall, in 2022, where we're in now, it's just it's a little dead. Not a lot of talk is being had with new TCGs out there. You see the one-off video here or there, but overall it's not really talked about as much. And I think if we look back, so I've talked about the whole era of the free Trendies era, right? I want to get into now the lessons learned from this, what we can take away. And I really want to talk about the whole, just two things to analyze when you're looking at a new TCG, because I think that overall now people didn't really care what they put into it, or like what TCG they backed. They were just backing anything that they could. But I think there's two factors that people are going to look at in the future. And the first is leadership, man. Who is running the ship? Are they competent? Do they know how to run a TCG? Because, I've seen a lot of different TCGs come up, and you have this leader who's like mystical, and, they have importance, but they have like zero background, and you don't have any like clue of who they are, what they're from, or what they're about, and just really understanding who they are. It's a very weird thing. And of course, I think you need some type of mysticism to a leader for a TCG. Makes sense. You had Richard Garfield, who made Magic the Gathering, or he was the designer and stuff, and he had that level of mysticism, and I think that that's a good thing. But you have no track record for all these people that are coming out, So I think that is going to be analyzed a lot going forward, and a lot more scrutiny is going to be based off of the actual leader, and I think when you're looking at different products to put your money into or collect or what have you, that's probably a really good thing to examine. And a lot of things, I think, with leadership and figuring out if a person is good or not, it's really up your gut, man. Trust your tummy. When you look at someone and you think, hey, is this somebody that is somebody that is reputable? Should I really back this project and put my money into this person? Because I think there's going to be a lot of situations in the future where people who make Kickstarters just take the money and run. And there's a very high level of risk when you don't know the people who are doing the game and they have no track record. It's like pink sheet penny stocks in a way, man. It's very, very, very risky. And the other thing I think that's very important for new TCG, and this is more evident in the communication that the leader does have to the public, is what is the strategy, man? How are you going to make your game be, have a very high growth rate and stand the test of time and be around for a while? And a lot of them, I think, don't really have this laid out, or if they do, it's very generic. But you can't just tell me like, step 1, create a Kickstarter. Step 2, step 3, profit. What the fuck is step 2? And what is your overall strategy of how you're going to make your game succeed? Now, in the past, if you look at Flesh and Blood, their strategy is very simple. It's very, very simple. Make a really damn good playable game. Make the gameplay the most important thing about your game, and just, focus 90 to 95% of all of your effort on just making a really damn good product. And overall, personally, I like that plan. I think that is a great strategy going forward, and I think that that's going to make Flesh and Blood very successful into the future. They care about the product. So much of their focus and effort is in their product, of the gameplay, but also the aesthetics and lore and everything, what have you, is in that space. Now, if you look at something like a MetaZoo or some other different type of games out there, they're more trying to do growth. They're like, okay, gameplay is not really important on our list. We're caring about growth and just getting as many new people into our game as possible and doing that type of strategy, which is not wrong, man. If you look at the Amazons or Walmarts, they do that too, man. It's all about capturing as much market share as you can. Grow, 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 and then afterwards you can smooth out the wrinkles of everything you did previously. And both strategies are interesting, and you can even equate it to like a Pokemon. Back in the day, Pokemon didn't really have a lot of people playing it. I just collected Pokemon in the back in the day, but I didn't know anyone who actually played the damn game. I think MetaZoo's going around the same strategy, man. And of course, Pokemon has a meta, and you can play Pokemon. The game. I don't want to say that you can't play Pokemon. You definitely can. But I feel like the primary targets for the product didn't play as much. It was more of a collectible thing, and you know, opening packs and such. It was like child gambling, if we're being honest with ourselves. So overall, those are the two big things I think we're going to just really be more focused on in the future, just as a community in general, is who's leading the ship and what is their strategy to make their game profitable and make their game succeed long term. And overall, personally, I think Flesh and Blood strategy is a lot easier for new TCGs to do. I think that the latter approach of doing market share and capturing all this market in this level, in this age, you need a high level of capital to make that work, because you have to market. You also have to get a bunch of different types of, you know, other companies to, you know, get on board with supporting your product. You need a lot of capital or a lot of big influence in your game to make that strategy work. Now, the other strategy that I've illustrated is Flesh and Bloods, is make a really damn good product, make a really good game that has like something different to the table, hasn't been done before. I think that is really the secondary type of game that's really going to succeed and stand the test of time. And overall, you know, I think that what would make the free Trendies era continue is seeing the TCGs in the past that were funded with Kickstarter, the biggest ones, which are Grand Archive and Sorcery, to succeed. Now, I personally think this era is over, man. Q1 2022 is the furthest it landed, you know, but I think there is a possibility late in 2022 if Grand Archive and Sorcery TCG are very profitable to the people, where the alpha print boxes just skyrocket in price. I think you could see the people who hold, and I'm just, you know, full disclosure, I am in both of those, not too heavily, but I did fund both of those Kickstarters. I think that if that happens, you could see that wave of people trying to find other different things to diversify in, which will be very interesting. But, you know, overall, I'm very skeptical on both of the games, not gonna lie. My personal opinion is Sorcery is probably the more desirable one overall in the market, doing something a little bit different over there. Overall, the gameplay looks all right. Watch Team Covenant's video of gameplay, and you know, it looks good, but it doesn't look like a Flesh and Blood, something that's like really fun that's going to want people to play again. It looks like I heard the word story driven. I don't know. I'm going to have to play it to tell you. I'm going to reserve my opinion on how the gameplay of that game is until that point. But overall, I think what really drives that game home is the artwork, man. Honestly, you know, I don't really care about playing the game. I'm going to get a binder. I'm going to try to set collect that whole set, put it in a binder, and just call it a day. Honestly, I might try to play the game a little. We'll see if people are out there who want to play. But overall, the artwork is just damn beautiful. Now, the Grand Archive one, man, it has potential from the anime perspective. If there's a lot of weeaboos out there, weebs of the shore, I mean, that is fucking hilarious. If that game does get some traction with that whole thing, you know, there is a possibility. We'll definitely see. But, you know, the whole question in the air, I think, for both of those games is what is the print run of the booster boxes? And I haven't looked into both of those to really understand what, but I don't think either game has really published their print run numbers. You know, and we don't know if either of them will get greedy and be like, well, we said we would print 20,000 boxes, but we got like $2 or $3 million worth of backing of Kickstarter, so might as well make it 30,000 boxes. You don't know what the print run is, so it's really going to be up to fate and seeing what happens with those to see if this era will continue. But that is really interesting to see if either of those are going to, you know, last for a bit. And, you know, the concerning thing is, I think with both of them, is what I previously discussed as strategy and, you know, what is their goals long term in making sets. And both of them don't really have like a clear cut and dry way to really expand their games, you know. And And we could definitely see something established once the games are actually out there in the wild and people actually touch the cards, and then they come out with, okay, this is our plan to maximize growth over the long term. But up until now, it's really just a question of how are they going to make their game successful. So that's a big question I have. But overall, man, I think another big thing that I've heard in the community at large for TCGs is this a player's game? Is that's like the question. There's this whole thing where people think there's like, is this a player's game? And I've heard it in relation to Flesh and Blood and a bunch of different ones. And I just want to make something very clear out there. Is that Flesh and Blood proved something in the economy for for TCGs in general? Is that TCG has 3 different letters: trading, card, game. And of course, the C in card, okay, these things are on cards, right? We all understand that. But trading and game are the other 2 letters in TCG. A TCG has to be tradable, and if it's tradable, then each card has monetary value. So there must be monetary value in your trading card game. You can ratchet it higher or lower, but ultimately it has to be collectible in some way or shape or form to actually be tradable. Then you have game, where you have a gameplay, and people have to be able to play the game. The gameplay has to be fun. So ultimately, those 2 things are a duality, man. You have 2 separate things that are, put together in one. And I think overall, when you hear, is this a player's game? I don't know what that sentence means. And when you hear this analysis, it boggles the brain, man. Like, all games, all TCGs, hopefully, should be playable and should be geared towards people playing with the cards. I know. I don't see a game coming out that's a collector's game and you're only supposed to collect the cards. Like, what's the converse of just a player's game? Is it just a collector's game where people just collect all the pieces and like, well, they just collect them and they don't there's no way to play with them? I think that overall, the only thing that comes close to a player's game is a living card game. And those games don't really have as much track record for succeeding in the long term. Now there's a good amount out there that trickle and trudge by, but overall it's not really good strategy that we've seen in the past. I mean, Fantasy Flight Games, I think, has been the biggest promoter of LCGs. I think they coined that term, man, living card game. And it's kind of ironic because all living card games eventually pretty much die, from what we've seen. Anything that has collectability in the whole core of the game is something that succeeds because there's a strong secondary market, and people have more incentives to play and get out into events, because if they win a big prize, well, they can sell it on eBay to the collectors. There's this whole duality of collectors and players. It's really important in a TCG, and I think that is really what is going to make any new TCG survive, is having both at the same time. It's not about being a pure collectible game where you release your print runs and you underprint things intentionally to make people wet their pants, or just produce hype and do 1 out of 1 cards and serialized cards and all these things of hyping up collectability. You can't just have that. You also have to have really good gameplay and really new mechanics that constantly come out that are making the players think of how to play the game better, play the game differently, or how to win over their opponent. You have to have that as well. So it's really duality of those both aspects. So just another thing that I've seen in the industry overall, said many different times of, is this a player's game or is this a collector's game? But overall, a TCG has to have a T and a C, and a G. You have to have them on cards, has to be tradable, and it has to be a game, hopefully. So I just want to wrap up on that, whole aspect of what we can kind of take away from the era. And please let me know in the comments below if there's anything I missed, or what takeaways you've had in the past of just what we've learned from this era overall. Because, there's so many different things that are going to be analyzed, but I think that where we're heading in TCG land of eras, right? You know, of course, I just talked about the free Trendies era. I think we're gonna have a pretty big cool off period. I don't know how long, months, a year, who knows. But after that, I think you're going to see, obviously, a lot of new TCGs fail. A lot of people take the money and run. A lot of people try to produce a card game but realize that it takes a long time to print a fucking card game and get all the product out and work with distribution and do all this stuff, and it's just too much to handle, and it goes belly up. You're gonna have a lot of TCGs that mismanage money, who overpay for marketing, overpay for another thing, and then they can't make their cards, or they have to ask more for their consumer. You're going to see a lot of screw ups, and but you probably are going to see a couple that trickle along and do their stuff and last a little bit. But I think you're going to see a reconsolidation of capital and players and investors and collectors into the core games that are succeeding in the industry, notably Flesh and Blood, MetaZoo, and question mark if any come out in the next couple of years that look desirable. You're just see the reconsolidation phase where people get out of their other TCGs that just never make it or go belly up, and try to get money out of that and reconsolidate into the core games, and including Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon. I think you're going to see a lot of people who try to diversify, and they're like, well, you know what? I thought the grass was greener on this side of the fence, but you know what? It isn't. I liked where I was, and they're going to hop back over the fence into what they were used to instead of the new games that they're, trying to get into. So, I think we're going to see a lot of people get burned. We're also going to see a lot of people just get really lucky. It's all going to go down, man. But I think where we're heading is people coming back to Flesh and Blood. People coming back to their core roots and their core games, because they realize that, sometimes new TCGs might look good on the surface, and they might look like a fresh of breath air, but overall they were just a big breath of smog that just makes you cough and like, oh, make it. I don't know why I did that. So, that's my overall thought of where we're headed, and I just want to really, say a couple of things into the future now. One big thing that I'm really interested in, a lot of other great content creators out there are talking about it, is costs of production, costs of sales for these new TCGs, or any TCG out there, including, the big boys, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, what have you, Flesh and Blood, and all TCGs, the whole TCG industry. I think the cost of sales in the next year or so is going to go up, and from inflation, from a lot of different perspectives. You have the gas prices going up substantially. You're going to have cost of production, not only with inflation with the cardboard, the ink, the packaging, all that, and what have you, but also the shipping. Shipping that out, shipping it overseas, going to distro and everything like that. You're going to have a lot of price increases in the market from what we've seen in other industries overall. And even though prices look cheap now for booster boxes and stuff, when new product gets released and they have to raise the prices, what is that going to do for already boxes out there in the market? They can't just sell a new product of let's say Uprising for Flesh and Blood for like $120 a box, and then you have Welcome to Wrath Unlimited sitting on the shelf for like $72. Like you can buy two of that box for the price of Uprising, and that's just an example. Uprising, I believe MSRP is $100, so it's no big deal. But you're going to see new products come out that have a higher price tag because the cost of printing, the cost of shipping goes up. So that's something that's definitely on my mind into the future, and that will shape the new era that we go into.